the statement of financial purpose, to me, I have sort of a dream or an opinion that I'm trying to kind of forcibly insert into the industry, that every client will have a statement of financial purpose. And let me give you a little bit of the history. So,
okay.
And I get asked this, it's not every day, but a couple of times a week for sure, on podcast interviews or media interviews, like, what's the biggest mistake people make? And I still think it's this. I think it's all the other mistakes are because we have never gotten clear about why we're doing this in the first place. Like,
okay,
why are we spending the way we are? Why are we saving the way we are? Why is the investment portfolio invested the way it is? It all comes down to this idea, like, what's the real, so this isn't a goal, right? So Bill Bacharach would have referred to these as values, right? And I read Bill's book, when I was first in the industry. So I was always thinking values. And then I ran across the work of an academic who talked about purpose, and purpose being this relatively enduring thing that informs our other activities. And I was like, I remember where I was actually when I was listening to that podcast. It was with Scott Barry Kaufman's podcast. And Scott's a psychologist out of Wharton or University of Pennsylvania. And I remember I was walking on a trail in New Zealand when I heard this, and I was like, oh my gosh, purpose, right? So that's when I moved away from this idea of values to purpose. I think they're probably pointing at the same thing, and I'm not zealot about what you call it. I just like the idea of a statement of financial purpose, almost like an investment policy statement, right? Like, if you're an institution, you have to have an investment policy statement, right?
Yep.
I think individual clients, we should have a statement of financial purpose. So here's what it is. Like my one-page plan, that line says, time with my family, mainly outside. Sometimes I get that reversed. Time outside, sometimes with my family. But I actually, time with my family, mainly outside, and service in my community and my church. That's what's there. Let me go through a couple more, because I find, like, just riffing on them for a minute. Jerry and Vera's, like, actual clients with no last name. Jerry said to me, Carl, I just don't want to be a burden to the kids. And if there's money left, and I would like to see them enjoy some of their inheritance while I was alive. Right? That's deeper than the goal. But what's interesting is goals, to me, this is where the conversation starts, because goals, we can now use this to frame the goals, right? We get to show them what their goals are instead of ask them, oh, what's your goals, in an intake form. So like with Jerry, it's really easy now to say, oh, interesting, Jerry, what would that look like, right? So that's why I think it's nestled foundationally, it's underneath the goal. So, the one I wrote about in the book, the one-page financial plan book, was the ER doctor who, she said, I just want flexibility, freedom, time to think about having a family, right? That sort of sat underneath there. Another client who said, she was older, retired, I never want to have to worry about money again, right? So it's those kind of statements. Now, nobody has to cry. Like, it's not a requirement that you cry to have it, but
I feel like the fact you pointed that out makes it sort of an expectation, though.
Yeah, I used to have a goal. I wouldn't tell clients this, but I had a goal in the first meeting that someone was going to cry and it wasn't going to be me. But you don't like Jerry and Vera, they were like from Tom Brokaw's Greatest Generation. Mm-hmm. Jerry had never, he came to me for the investments. What have you got for me, kid? Right? And we all know that if we engage at that spot, at least if we start competing at that spot, like my investments are better than their investments, and especially if we compete based on inches, right? Like, look, my pitch book is 3 inches and theirs is only 2. Like, if we engage at that level, we know what that leads to. It's just an absolute, sort of gerbil wheel of a relationship. But if I can say to Jerry, got it. Performance is super important to you. Mm-hmm. And it's important to us too. It's one of the key drivers of lifetime success for sure. Before we get there, could we just back up? So help me understand why this would be important to you. Jerry, why, right? And then ask him. And then Jerry says to me, gosh, I don't know, but I just never want to be a burden to my kids. So now, like, Jerry didn't cry, but he'd never said that to anyone else. And now to see it written on the top of the page that he sees every time we meet as a reminder of like everything else we're doing is in service of that purpose. That's what a statement of financial purpose is. Greetings, Carl here. Thanks for listening to Michael and I talking like we do over at the Kitces and Carl podcast-a-rooney. So much fun. You know, there's another thing I do called the membership. And I'm going to invite you to take a 7-day free trial and just find out what it's about. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to say any more other than this. It's an invitation to attend a private conversation that you cannot hear anywhere else. Find out what I'm talking about by clicking the link and taking the free trial.